Good evening. My name is Sandra Craig, and I represent the Etiquette Foundation of Illinois. You are watching a live interactive call-in television program brought to you on CAN TV 21. Let's talk etiquette. This evening, our topic of discussion will be Stop the Violence and Teach Etiquette. Call a friend, call a neighbor, call anybody and tell them to tune in to Let's Talk Etiquette on CAN TV 21. We look forward to hearing from you, your comments, your concerns, because, of course, the violence is escalating in our city, and I know we all have something to say, and let's share it, okay? Now, I would like to introduce my awesome co-host, Mr. Nathan Wright. He will be here with me during the duration of this show. Our phone lines are open, and the number is 312-738-1060. Again, 312-738-1060. Welcome, Mr. Wright.
Wow, I am so pleased to be back with you and to be your co-host. Isn't this just a wonderful opportunity to share some great information with our listening and viewing audience?
Yes, it
on
is.
this grand subject? Yes. Thank you for inviting me.
I wouldn't do it without you. Okay, Mr. Wright. This is continuation of our topic last week, and there were so many people that were interested and concerned and had comments, and we decided to do a second half of it because, of course, the violence, unfortunately, is continuing in our city, and, of course, our children are dying in the streets still, and seems like there's no help or anything in sight to curtail the violence. And so I know we all have an idea of what we could do to solve it, and we want to hear what your idea is because together we can maybe do something to help this violence. I mean, we're getting shot on the expressway, we're getting shot in the streets. I mean, it's an epidemic, it's a crisis, and it needs to stop, and we need to do something about it, okay? Now, I do believe I already have a caller.
Yes.
Good evening. How you doing? You know what? We may have to do some things that we don't want to do, and it may just be common sense. One, we may need to put in a curfew. And with certain things that are going on, then we may not have what we call stop and frisk. We may need to have something called stop and question, because if we got these game bangers out here, they know if they're going to be stopped and questioned. And they can be checking to see whether or not people's on parole, on probation. And guess what? If they're on probation or on parole, guess what? They can be searched. And we need to start thinking about what can we do to make things better. That's one of the things we can do.
Okay, very good.
Very good comment.
Go ahead. You want to respond?
I was just going to say very good comment, and I think that's a real good point right there.
Yes. I don't know if more policing in that sense will really reduce the violence, because much of it is drive-by shootings and things of that sort. As you well know, if the police stopped every other car, you wouldn't be able to go anywhere in the city just simply because of the traffic backup from police stopping and searching or frisking or detaining someone to ask them questions. We have a Constitution, and the Constitution has already been eroded significantly. Mm-hmm. And if we do things that will infringe upon our constitutional rights, I think that may be counterproductive, because you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. And if we begin to just stop people randomly, then there are people who aren't doing anything unlawful who are going to be detained, who are going to be searched, who are going to have to go through some unnecessary changes simply because they're traveling on the roadways or walking on the sidewalks. And I'm afraid that may not be the best thing to do, because once certain lines are crossed, it's very, very difficult to go back to what it once was. Mm-hmm. And so I thank the caller for calling, but anything that's going to encroach upon our civil liberties and constitutional rights, I don't think it would be in our benefit to be in support of that. I think last week we had a caller call in about maybe bringing in the National Guards. And once you turn the neighborhoods into a prison camp or a detention center where you have to have a pass to get into a community and a pass to exit, you technically have two cities, or you have a larger detention camp that's considered a community, but the people there are restricted and are suspect when the majority of the people aren't breaking any laws or violating any laws. So we have to be a little careful when we want to do things that may cause our rights to be eroded. And as you well know, our rights are already under, our privacy rights are already under assault. We can't assume to have much of that left. And if we go down this other road, it would be just as much a setback as doing something that drastic.
Okay. Thank you for the comment, Mr. Wright. I have a question for you. Mr. Wright, how do we reach our children to cause them to have hope when the future for many of our kids looks bleak?
Well, that's a very complex question, but I think it has to start with education. And this is why we are advocating Stop the Violence, Teach Etiquette. If you teach your child to be civil, if you teach that child to be humane, if you teach that child to be polite and courteous and respectful, it's highly unlikely that that child would engage in a violent act or a criminal act, because that is against their value system. While children are lacking values that are productive, that are honorable values. So when you teach your child etiquette, you're teaching them how to be respectful, how to be honorable, how to be polite, how to be civil. And when those are your values, then you're least likely to do something like tell a lie or do something, steal something, or any of those kind of degenerate criminal kinds of behavior. So this is what's missing. Teach etiquette. And if we do that in the schools, like we teach English for 12 years, or we teach science or math for so many years, if we teach etiquette for the same number of years, I would guarantee you the violence would just simply go away, because you won't have anybody interested in doing something like that. You know?
Right, I agree. I agree. Okay, I believe we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, hello?
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear
Okay. I called last week and I mentioned the National Guard to halt the violence. Just to briefly recap, they put 1,000 more police on the streets this week. We did a lot of marching and praying, and everyone got together and held hands. And then we had 69 people get shot, more than ever before. So when I mentioned the National Guard last week, you said, well, no, it would take 10 years before we could change anything. So what? We've got to make the streets safe. We've marched for 40 years. We've done community and home, intervention. For the last 20 years, they've been talking about that. I think you would feel differently if you were in one. See, what's happening is it's not just people shooting people, in conflicts. It's a drug war, okay? And so because it's a drug war on the south and the west sides, we've got to have outside intervention come in to end the war. Once we can end the war and make the streets safe so that people aren't randomly being killed just by straight gunfire or driving on Lakeshore Drive, once we can stop all of that, then that's when etiquette can be part of a multifaceted attack plan to change behavior and to more or less guarantee certain social outcomes. And I hate the fact, well, you know what, I think it's good that there's a disagreement, but we've tried it you guys' way for the last 20, 30, 40 years, and nothing's happened. It's getting worse. So thank you for giving me the moment to, to make these comments. But we got to have outside intervention because we're not changing, doing anything. 1,000 more police didn't stop, didn't help.
Well,
I'm curious what you think. Thank you.
I get the point. And thank you for calling, too. I first believe that if we want to stop drugs from coming into the country, we have the ability to do that. Now, I'm not advocating, as a member of the Etiquette Foundation, I'm not advocating violence, but we are carrying out violence all over the world. We are drone killing people, we're bombing them, we're doing all kinds of things to stop terrorism. If we took that same position to stop drugs from coming into the country, I'm certain the Marines and the Air Force and the drones will end that little episode of narcotic production in the countries that are producing it. And, so there is a way to stop the drugs from coming into the country, and therefore they wouldn't end up on the west side and the south side of Chicago and other major cities, because I don't think the people in those communities have the ability to produce the drugs, the narcotics. And secondly, there's a simpler way. We just simply need to decriminalize it. Okay? If you want to make it worthless, then just don't make it against the law. If people want to use some kind of substance in their bodies, then if they're able to acquire it and the government is apparently not, I don't remember anyone getting arrested for bringing in drugs recently in this city. I don't remember anyone, a truckload of drugs from Mexico getting apprehended or caught in the last, 2 years? And the last time I think I saw they busted a truckload of drugs, they showed the guy's pictures. Now I never heard no more about it. Did they ever go to court? Did they ever have a trial? I didn't see the news people down at the courthouse saying that these guys got convicted for getting caught with 2 tons of heroin or marijuana. So what is happening with that end of the war on drugs? They need to stop this from coming in the country.
I agree. I believe we have a caller, Mr. Wright. Caller, you're on the air.
Good evening again. Mr. Wright, if I'm wrong about something, you stop me dead in my tracks. Do we got a deal?
Well, I don't know what you're going to say. I'm not going to say it in advance.
No, it could be a quite logical conversation.
Okay, go ahead.
You know what?
Your comment.
I was the guy a couple of years ago saying bringing the National Guard. That is not going to work. What we need to do is break up some of this racism in Chicago. Now, you look downtown in the Loop. Can you name one black restaurant downtown in the Loop? Can you name?
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you about your question. Is it about the topic we are talking about today?
Yes, it is. We got to break up some.
Stop the violence.
What we see going on is a lot of racism that's causing the problem when people are locked out. And you got a class of people that's controlling things and locking people out, and they cannot get access to jobs, decent housing. You're going to have problems.
Well, yes, jobs and employment does relate to...
And education.
And education does relate to...
right. Then we got this prison, the pipeline. And then when you look at Navy Pier, the biggest tourist attraction in the state, when you look at Navy Pier, how many black vendors do you see out there in Navy Pier? When you see some of these big constructions projects in Chicago, how many blacks you see working out there?
Well,
or we had 2 years ago, we had this big... project.
That's another issue. That's another issue, and I'm not.
Yeah, but it all lead to violence.
Is that Joe?
Yeah.
Joe, we're not talking about racism in that sense or
but
unemployment.
But it all lead to the violence when people are shut out. What do you think they're going to do when people don't have a job? What do you think that's going to lead to?
I do understand that. We will devote some time to a show.
That's all I'm saying, okay?
Racism and how that
it's a big part of the problem.
All right, Joe, thanks.
Take care.
All right.
Thank you. Caller, you on the air.
Yeah, I just want to make one quick comment. Mr. Wright, I do agree with you. They do need to legalize drugs. But, when I first came upon that thought process, I said, well, why won't they legalize drugs? It would stop all of, because what's happening now, It's the same thing that happened during Prohibition when alcohol was illegal. They had the drug gangs and the shootouts and the same exact thing. But then, wait a minute. Drugs, it's a trillion-dollar industry. Okay, we've got the whole criminal justice system filled with people that were caught with drugs and that were incarcerated with drug offenses. So in America, and quite frankly in the world, you follow the money. So with that being the case, do you know that the number one cash crop in the state of Kentucky is marijuana? The number one cash crop in the state of Oregon is marijuana. So drugs is an underground economy that's actually propping up our economic economy. Economy, I might be a double negative there. But the fact of the matter is, they'll never make drugs illegal because there's too much money in it. And quite frankly, and this is my final comment, black and brown people are being used as slaves in this drug economy with the warehousing and the criminality and the business in jails of outsourced work.
Well, I can tell you,
it's so multifaceted.
Right.
Thank you.
I can tell you that we certainly believe the reason that we get such a pushback when it comes to teaching etiquette to our children is probably for that very reason, because they want this segment of the community, the poor and disadvantaged segment of the community, to be susceptible to doing anything to earn a dollar. And drug sales is a money cash crop, but it's also a way to end up in prison or the way to end up shot dead as well. So your point is well taken concerning it's too big of a business to legalize. I have to accept that because they haven't legalized or decriminalized it. Let me use that term, decriminalized it. So we want to teach etiquette so that our children won't be susceptible to using drugs at some point, even if it's decriminalized. Just no need to use substances that alters your state of mind. So that's the position we're taking.
And that contributes to violence too, the drugs altering your state of mind.
Yes,
Okay, Mr. Wright, I have a question for you. Mr. Wright, you told me a couple of months ago that there was 3,000 millionaires that left Chicago because of violence and racism in 2015. So our city is losing opportunities, revenue due to the violence. Explain in detail how this affects the city of Chicago and the residents of Chicago.
Well, violence is actually contributing in such a negative way to our city well-being, the economic health of our city. Tourism is one area that people spend one less day in the city of Chicago during the peak time for tourists. The city loses about $1 billion in revenue just in one day. So if I decide to come to Chicago, and perhaps I may have thought of staying here 3 days, and then I decide to just stay 2, $1 billion is not circulating in Chicago just because of that. And then when you add the fear from violence and what is going on now, even on the roadways, the city is losing billions of dollars just in tourist dollars as a consequence of that. And then the millionaires, the people the money people, are leaving the city too. The Tribune did an article. I saw that in the Tribune. You can Google it. The Tribune did an article on that about 2 or 3 weeks ago. They said more than 3,000 millionaires moved out of Chicago because of fear of the violence. And they specifically said it was regarding the violence. So we have a subject that's called etiquette. And we're encouraging everyone out there that's listening to purchase them an etiquette book, okay? This is the book that's so valuable, so important. If you have children, you must have an etiquette book in your library. And you can see this is a really fat, thick book with so much information on how to live a right life, a righteous life, a good life, a non-violent life, a law-abiding life. This is the book. So please, get you a book like this in your library.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Yes.
I believe we have a caller. Caller, you on the air.
Uh, yes, good evening. How y'all guys doing?
Oh,
Good evening,
Steve,
Steve.
how
How
are
are
And
you?
you?
very, very interesting top comments that was given to you. But it's a great topic. I don't think so much of, I understood, Joe, the racism and economics because it's a financial thing why some people go to McDonald's and some go to pork chop. Some can, some won't, And the drugs, I don't think the reason why people killing people is so much as about drugs. I think what it is, and this is just my opinion, people don't care about people anymore. They don't care. They don't care about going to jail. Matter of fact, a lot of them want to go to jail. But to me, there's a very interesting phrase in the Bible in Ezekiel, and it's eye for eye, tooth for a tooth. We need to tighten up our judicial system. You've got to make sure if you do something that's so crazy, you got to pay for this. But see, they go to jail, then they out in another year or so. Again, people just don't care about people. People don't care about what they do. It's so sad.
Yes.
But again, you said something at the beginning of the show, Mr. Wright, education. And a lot of people don't get that educational part at the beginning. A lot of people don't get that parenting from their parents at the beginning. But either way it go, we don't have nothing in control of what happened yesterday. Well, we need to start worrying about today.
Yes.
So again, I think we need to get the judicial system tightened up and more. Cut their hands off. I don't know what y'all do, kill them or something. Because if I see somebody getting their hands cut of dying for this, it's something that I know I wouldn't want to do. Listen, thank you for taking the show. I know you
Right.
got to get out there.
Yes.
So let me get out and hear your response.
Yes. Steve is one of our best callers. I really like what you contribute to the show, Steve, and I appreciate you calling. Yes, the criminal justice system is another area of the government that does need some serious reform. And I don't have to talk about all of the issues that says we're not getting justice. They're not administering justice fairly and equally. So I agree the government is broken and it needs repair in a whole host of areas. So that's certainly one.
Yes,
That's,
I
agree. Yeah.
agree, Mr.
Thanks,
White.
thanks, Steve.
We have a caller, but I don't know how long we can talk.
If it's a short, maybe it's a short.
Okay, caller, you're on the air.
I'm going to be real quick. The City College of Chicago did a study over 15 years, and it shows where how blacks and browns been locked out of the trade union. And you're talking about over $1 billion in terms of salaries. It could have had an effect on black and brown community. And just imagine, all right, they've been locked
Okay, we
out.
only got a few
You don't
minutes
think
left.
that don't have an effect
We
in
only have
terms
a
of
few
certain
minutes left.
communities
We've already gotten
in Chicago?
gotten
Something's
this.
wrong.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, if the callers don't mind, just just doing one call a show.
Right.
That would be a great help. We would appreciate that if you could do that for us. Let some other people. We have about 2 or 3 people waiting now that won't get on the air.
Right.
ahead.
I would like to speak to our viewers tonight. We're approaching another weekend, and this past weekend was very violent. And again, I make a plea to everyone listening and to share this with those that are not listening and watching. We, as a people, have got to do something as far as stopping this violence. I mean, if it means talking to a young person, if it means sitting down, breaking it down to a young person, letting them know what's to come and what they need to do and where the focus needs to be, whatever you need to do it. Because we can, if one of us would reach one child, we've saved one life. Okay? And we're tired. I know you're tired of seeing our children dying in the street, killing each other. Our children, again, are not dying and killing because they cannot read and write. They're crying in the streets and dying in the streets because they lack behavioral training. And you don't have to be an etiquette teacher to teach behavioral training. You all know right from wrong. Let's all pitch in and try to do something to help this violence and to save our children. Now, that's my plea to you. Now, I would like to thank Mr. Wright, my very special co-host, for being here with me today. And I appreciate you, and I ask that you come back again with us next week. We promise to have another awesome show for you, and we'll be here, and we're looking forward to you being here. Have a safe weekend, and remember, reach somebody this weekend and save and stop the violence. God bless. Good night.